Hey there from the News Radio, 1120 AM and 93.7 FM, KPNW studios. I'm Bill Lundun, and tonight's look at the insanity and craziness and unexplainable activities that we call news, brought to you by Dr. Michael Bratland of Chris Dental, where they'll see anybody. And you know they'll see anybody because I point my finger at you. God. That's annoying. All right, here's a look at some of the stories that we're following. The head of Florida's university system has now directed the schools there to disband campus chapters of a pro-Palestinian student group that he alleges are aligned in support of terrorists. In a letter to the state's 12 university presidents, State University System Chancellor Ray Rodriguez said 2 Florida chapters of Students for Justice in Palestine must, in his words, be deactivated. A spokesperson for Governor Ron DeSantis said the governor directed the University of Florida and the University of South Florida to remove the groups immediately. Now, the letter said that a toolkit released by the group described the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel as, quote, the resistance, and unequivocally states Palestinian students in exile are part of this movement, not in solidarity with this movement. The letter contended that the National Students for Justice in Palestine organization affirmatively identified it was part of the attack and said it's a felony in Florida to knowingly provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization. Rodriguez closed by stating the university system is working with DeSantis to ensure that they're using all the tools at their disposal to crack down on campus demonstrations that delve beyond protected First Amendment speech. Meanwhile, the chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine at the University of Florida responded by saying, "This is disgraceful." Well, for the last 3 months, drivers around Oregon have been free to gas up without the help of an attendant. Well, now one of the state's largest labor unions wants to put people back in their vehicles. United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555 has submitted an initiative petition today that would reinstate a ban on self-service fueling. They've got to collect 117,000 plus signatures by July, and the heated debate about who can be trusted to operate Oregon's gas pumps would then be decided in November of next year. Michael Salvaggio is the political director for the union, and he said, "It has put people out of work, made getting gas less accessible, and made stations more dangerous." And he said, "Getting self-service gas hasn't helped anyone." Now, some of the chief petitioners that have signed onto the measure include Union President Dan Clay and former Portland City Commissioner Steve Novick. Now, neither one of them have given any comments, but Novick said prior to the legislature changing the law, allowing you to pump your own gas, he said he was opposed to self-serve fueling in Oregon for several reasons. They were the loss of jobs, and this is a direct quote, "My primary concern is quirkiness. It's an odd little thing that helps make Oregon, Oregon." Oh, that's a reason for an initiative petition. That said, on the safety issue, can we be honest? It's not that dangerous. 48 other states can pump their own gas. And if it were that dangerous, they wouldn't have self-serve, and gas station attendants would be required to wear fire suits and helmets. And as far as Novick's comments about being an odd thing that helps make Oregon, Oregon, no, it's just an Oregon thing that makes Oregonians look stupid and wimpy. I can't do it. It's hard. 5 Oregon Republicans challenging the Secretary of State's decision to bar them from running for re-election are going to make their arguments directly to the Oregon Supreme Court in mid-December. The Supreme Court said today, yep, will hear the case. The five, including Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp, are challenging the validity of Secretary of State Griffin Valade's earlier administrative rule barring the five from running for and holding office during their immediate next term after their 2023 legislative walkout. Now, this is all in the aftermath of ballot measure 113, which actually was enshrined in the Oregon Constitution. It disqualifies lawmakers with 10 unexcused absences during a session from running again. Now, the five argued the wording of the measure means if a legislator accrues 10 or more unexcused absences during a legislative term, the legislator is barred from running for election for the next term after this term rather than the next term. Well, the Oregon Supreme Court will parse it. Governor Tina Kotek is going to back State Representative Janelle Bynum in her run for Congress in a hotly contested Democratic primary. Kotek's endorsement comes as Bynum, a Democrat from Clackamas, is campaigning for the 5th Congressional District with Jamie McLeod Skinner, a Central Oregon attorney and frequent candidate who lost to Republican U.S. Representative Lori Chavez DeRaymer last year. Metro Council President Lynn Peterson is also running. Democrats, both statewide and nationally, consider defeating Chavez DeRaymer a top priority. Well, the Oregon Department of Education is defending a controversial state board decision to continue putting a pause on a high school graduation test requirement for another 6 years, saying the state still has, well, pretty tough requirements for a diploma in terms of skill and coursework. Yeah, okay. Board members said that last week's unanimous vote that most high school students would take standardized mandated tests in 2027 and 28 was the right decision to make. And they said that the reason for that is because those tests aren't equitable. Now, if you recall, the Oregon Department of Education paused the testing requirement during the pandemic in 2020, and opponents argued that pausing the requirement devalues Oregon's high school diploma. State education officials said requiring students to pass standardized tests or create an in-depth assignment that they could show they can read, write, and do arithmetic didn't translate into improvements in students' post-high school success. No, it just proved that they could read, write, and do arithmetic. Former GOP gubernatorial candidate Christine Drazen, a leading opponent against the pause in the requirement, said it's clear the board works for the governor, not Oregonians. She appointed 6 of the 9 members of the board, so Governor Kotek is ultimately responsible for their decision to ignore public input. Most of the public input into this was, we want the testing requirements to prove that before a kid can graduate in Oregon, they have to be able to prove they can read, write, and do arithmetic, in particular because test scores have shown Oregonians in high school are woefully deficient in their ability to read, write, and do arithmetic. So, you've heard of the single point in time count. It's something that's done every year, not only in Oregon, but all across the country, even in Montana, Rick. And it's where people go out and count those who are homeless. Well, in a single night in 2022, 582,462 people experienced homelessness in the United States. Since 2017, nationally, there's been a 6% increase in homelessness. About 6 in 10 of those people nationally experiencing homelessness did have access to emergency shelters, transitional housing programs, or safe havens, while the remainder, well, they didn't have anything. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, who puts all of these numbers together, they estimated that 17,959 people experienced homelessness on that single night in Oregon in 2022. Adjusting for population, that comes to about 42.3 people for every 10,000 state residents. Third most among the 50 states. We're number 3. We're number 3. Even more concerning, of those experiencing homelessness in Oregon, a reported 61.7% were unsheltered, the 13th highest share among the states. By comparison to Oregon, our neighbors to the east, Idaho, 1,998 people experiencing homelessness on a single night in Idaho. That's 10.5 people for every 10,000 residents, 25th fewest in the 50 states. Actually, only California and Vermont had higher homeless numbers than Oregon. By the way, in case you're wondering, Washington came in at number 6. So this is following up on a story, and Rick, I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but we'll get to it in this particular story. This is kind of a follow-up on something that at least I've been covering on the KPNW wake-up call. The Army Corps of Engineers has been rapidly lowering the levels of Lookout Point and Green Peter reservoirs since June. Now, those are a couple of major reservoirs that are near a place called Sweet Home, Oregon. It's here in the Willamette Valley, actually not far from where I'm at here in Eugene. And even as the reservoirs have been drained, they're seeing consequences for residents living by the reservoirs. They are now seeing their wells go dry. Now, the goal, supposedly, of the drawdown is to help young Chinook salmon and steelhead populations pass through the reservoirs and get past the dams. And the Army Corps of Engineers is drawing down those two reservoirs to record low levels. And a lot of the residents who have wells in the area now have to take large tanks to water treatment centers and have them filled just to have drinking water and water to flush their toilets and take baths. So this drawdown that's supposed to help Chinook and steelhead populations, well, it wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers' idea. It has to do with a lawsuit. And the drawdown was ordered by the courts after radical environmentalists took the Corps of Engineers to court. Now, this is the same group of environmentalists that want to breach all the dams in Oregon, exponentially increasing the cost of electricity here in the area. And the dams not only produce energy, but also, well, they're flood control. They help keep the area from flooding. Now, not only are wells going dry, but these drawdowns, as I reported earlier on the wake-up call, and again, I wish I could remember whether I did the story on Rick's broadcast here, it also has killed tens of thousands of native fish in the reservoir, including kokanee. As a matter of fact, it was so bad, it scared people that were visiting the area. The Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife confirmed, yeah, the fish kill of tens of thousands of these native kokanee were caused by the drawdowns. The Army Corps of Engineers admitted, yeah, that killed the fish. And they said, we're going to die because we have to draw it down further because the courts and the environmentalists say so. So, yeah, let's kill a whole bunch of native fish to protect other fish. It helps keep Oregon, Oregon. And finally, this story, very much Corvallis-centric, but, well, you'll see. So, a person suspected of threatening to place a bomb in a robot that delivers food orders on the Oregon State University campus on Tuesday has been confirmed to be arrested. Now, university officials on Tuesday at lunchtime sent out what they called an urgent alert about a bomb threat in these food delivery robots. And the alert was definitely sci-fi iRobot dystopian. I'll give it to you verbatim. Quote, this is what the alert said. Do not open robots. Avoid all robots till further noticed. The university then about an hour later sent out more alerts saying the robots have been isolated in a safe location. Technicians are investigating. Then about 15 minutes after that, they sent out another alert, quote, all clear, you may now resume normal activities. Robot inspection continues in a safe location. So the university's Department of Public Safety arrested the person they think is responsible for the threat. They didn't say whether that person was a student or released the person's name. The maker of the robots, San Francisco-based Starship Technologies, said in an email Tuesday afternoon that it was a student at Oregon State University that set the bomb threat and that it was meant to be a joke and a prank. I'm doing this story because it's so bizarre. I never thought in real life I would ever be reading the words in any type of actual broadcast. Do not open robots. Avoid all robots until further notice. It's like something out of a bad 50s sci-fi movie. It's what helps keep Oregon. I'm going to drive that into the ground. It's what makes Oregon, Oregon. Okay, and now the man who left Oregon because Oregon was being Oregon. It's time now for Rick to roll out some more reel. Get on it, man.